I didn't record 9s. I think I usually record 10 o'clock and I don't record the other two, typically how it works. Okay, but that way I have one recording up for people who can come and ask questions. They at least listen to other questions that people have and get some of the answers they want. um, to respond to some uh, emails, and I'll just go ahead and say that kind of for my own my own sanity, the fact that we've all got families, you do too, at home. I've got kids trying to do schooling online as well and stuff. Usually about 5 o'clock, I try to shut down the computer for school. Okay, so I've got personal time of my own. Sometimes I will go as late as 6 or 7, but generally speaking, if you give me an email after 5 or whenever I've shut my computer down, I'm not going to respond until the next day. Over the weekend, I think about 7:30 Friday night was when I called it good, and 7:30 somewhere in there. So yeah, those of you sent emails over the weekend asking me stuff. Um, there were some. Oh, I need to let somebody in here. Uh, there were a few people who had some situations that didn't allow them to. Oh, looks like somebody got kicked out, having to come back in. Okay. Uh, anyway, there's some situations where uh, extenuating circumstances caused issues with test 3 and genetics quiz. Okay. If if you had one of those problems, you missed missed the test. If you would email me again about that, like now, okay. When I get done or as soon as this ends, if you're on your phone, you can't do that. Um, when I get done with my 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock class, then I will go on this afternoon and I will look and see everybody who's emailed me those questions. And if you need one of those tests or quizzes open back up, I will open it back up for you this afternoon. Okay, I would like for you to be able to uh, take those by midnight tonight because I don't want to leave those open too long. Partly it's because if I leave it open too long, I will my mind is on this week and not last week or the week before even. And so I will forget to go back in and get your grade off of those, look at those, that sort of thing. So if we can take care of that today, then that makes it's kind of on my mind today. It's on my agenda today. And I don't want people scattered out over multiple days trying to do that. Okay, so those two things. So just email me about that. And if I don't, if I don't think your situation sounds like it needs, it's like you just messed up and too bad, kind of like sometimes in class, I'll talk to you about it. I'll email you. Okay. But you go ahead and email me that you've got a concern and we'll talk about it. Uh, as far as the rest of the week goes, this is our last week of the semester. Next week is finals. So I will talk about that now. Uh, I have put up on Friday, part of the reason why I was online so late on Friday night was I was still putting up uh, the mechanisms of evolution lecture. I did, I think, I think that was a 2-part lecture, maybe been a 3, can't remember now. I did a lot of recording on Friday. I abbreviated it though. There was a lot of stuff I kind of glossed over, but oh yeah, that wound up that had an extra section. That may have even been a 4-part lecture. There is a part in there in particular that you need to look at. It's the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium equation. I go through an example problem. There will be 1 or 2 of those problems on the final. Okay. Normally I try to get that onto the genetics test, but that didn't happen this semester. So, but they will be on the final. And so be sure you know how to do that. The lectures, the recorded lectures that I put up online, those are the lectures I would give in class. I I give my talk, I give my spiel, almost, I've got my little script after all these years of teaching, and I give the hints that this is what's going to be on the test, or this can be on the test, and I may ask this question that way. Those are there in those recorded lectures, and that's like going to class. Okay, I'm not taking attendance or anything on those, but if you don't watch those, then you're effectively skipping class and just getting the notes. Okay, because the slides that I put up at the front, those are the notes. Okay, you're not getting the extra elaboration that I do, and sometimes I give added information that's not in the notes but is kind of reflected on the test. And not a lot of people, I don't have very many views on most of those lectures. It's like about 6 or 7 people out of all 60 students enrolled are watching those. Okay, so that's probably not good. And if you didn't score as well on this last test as you hoped or anticipated, and you didn't watch those, that's probably why. Okay, it's like you didn't go to class. So Animal Kingdom is what's left. I've got one lecture that I recorded on Friday, and it's up. I think there will be 2 more sections to that, lecture-wise, maybe 3. And I hope to have those up tomorrow. I want to do some recording on that. Well, want to this afternoon, but I also have a chemistry class that I'm a little bit behind in where I need to be with them. I'm sort of caught up with you. Because on the school schedule, if we were doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, I would be presenting this Animal Kingdom this week to you. So I'd have 2 lectures to do that, because Friday I usually don't present any material. So that's, you know, I'm on schedule with you. With them, I need to focus on getting a lecture or 2 up for them today, beforehand, before you. Okay, so look for those tomorrow, or at latest Wednesday by noon. Okay, but I do want to have them up by then, so you've got a few days to study that new material, or listen to it. I mean, you've got the notes, but I'd like for you to have the lecture available by Wednesday. Because at that point in a on-campus class, you would have had your last lecture with me. Okay. The final will be during your normal class. Well, not normal class time exactly. Your final will be next Monday, a week from today, at this time, 10 o'clock, and you'll have 2 hours. You'll have from 10 to noon. That is your scheduled final time. From my understanding, and this is the 10 o'clock class I'm talking to. If you are watching this later and you're in the 9 or 11, then your time schedule is different. And you can look at the printed schedule on that on the NEO webpage, where they give the schedule for all the finals. It's based on your time. Okay. So, but 10 o'clock is Monday at 10, from 10 to 12. So I will just run it like test 3. It'll be 100 questions. It'll be multiple choice. It'll go up, and you need to take it at that time. Okay, 10 to noon. Because in the past, when I've taught online classes, and I think that's kind of still how they're doing it, is just like campus. They want the tests taken by the class all at the same time. They don't want students taking it at different times. On campus, you have to take it during your scheduled time. If there's a reason you can't, then we have to file a request with the vice president to have it approved for you to take it at a different time. And in the past, policies have been kind of similar for the online classes. So if you've got a work conflict, or you've new job, now you're working during your normal class times, you need to probably see if you can rearrange your work schedule for that, for all of your finals next week. Check with your other teachers and how they're doing that. And if you've got a problem, let me know, and I will, obviously check with the policy with the vice president and see what we have to do to allow you to do a different time. Usually she has to review it and then sends me an email of yay or nay, whether you can or whether you can't. Okay. And I think that's probably all the information updates I need to get out. That's all I can think of at the moment. So at this point, questions about the paper that's due today, or any other questions? I'm just opening this up for questions. Now, if you need to talk, you've got to unmute yourself by holding the space bar down while you're talking, because I have everybody automatically muted. If you are on a phone, my understanding is you swipe left, right? On the left side. So you swipe to the right. Okay. And then you tap, and it'll take your video off, but it'll put the speaker on. At least that's my understanding. I haven't done it on the phone, but a few people here in the house have done it on the phone, so they're coaching me.
What about time zone conflicts for the final? I understand that you said a specific time, but then I know some people that are like an hour behind. like or 2 hours behind the time in Oklahoma. So what about
So, well, when I taught online before, I think I only had one instance where a student was on a different time zone. And so what they did was they just set their alarm for them to be available at that time. Okay. So if you're like an hour ahead, you log in at your 11 o'clock. Okay. If I'm teaching, if the test opens up at 10 and you're like on the East Coast, you're east of Oklahoma, then you would be having to, you'd be able to take the test from 11 to 1 your time. It'd be 10 to noon our time. Pacific time would adjust earlier. You'd have to get up earlier. But you're probably gonna have to do that for all your classes. Anybody's in that situation, and if that puts somebody at having to take a test in the middle of the night, which I don't believe we've got anybody in Hawaii, but I don't know, or in Asian countries, again, that's something that we'd have to petition with the vice president to get a different time slot for you. As far as I know, I have one European student online here. I think though 10 is going to put her in the afternoon, if I remember right. And previous conversations we had, she indicated that was okay, but I'll let her, email me if that's a problem. Okay. So I think.
How many points can you earn from these last two assignments? Like
The
together?
labs. Oh, the two labs that I haven't pulled the grades for yet.
Mm-hmm.
They're 20 points each. Yeah, that's, I did receive some emails over the weekend with people saying that their grades weren't showing for the two labs. Well, the natural selection lab and the sampling ecosystems lab, I have not pulled grades for those two because, so I think most of you probably heard me say earlier in the presentation that they couldn't figure out a way to import my Excel files into D2L. And so I have been going in and entering everybody's grades by hand for the entire semester. And I finally got caught up last week. But when I pulled your grades, at the time I pulled your grades, the natural selection lab was still open. So people had not yet submitted grades or submitted their assignment for that. Some had, some hadn't. And I didn't want to get a half a half report. So I just didn't get that. So I think the other lab closed last night. So I will go in and pull both of those reports this week and get those updated. But those are worth 20 points each. So it's a total of 40 points for those.
Okay, and the final paper, how much percent like is that worth?
That is your lab final. So it is 100 points. It's a final grade.
Okay.
And then your final's worth 100 points as well. There is some bonus on the final. Okay.
Is the final all multiple choice?
Yes, it is.
This doesn't have to do with the final, but will there be another lab this week?
I don't think so. Did you do it? What your last lab was the ecosystem lab?
Yes.
That is the last lab of the semester. Ecosystem lab is it. So yeah, typically I don't have a lab the last week of school. I have it if we had missed a lot of school on campus and we were still on campus. I would possibly be doing the last lab this week. So, but I always leave that as a buffer, okay, for making up a missed lab. And so, but I prefer it to be a week where you don't have to come to lab that day. You can use that study time instead to study for the final.
Well, what if you did a lab but you forgot to drop it in the Dropbox? Do you just count that as a loss?
No, the Dropbox is only a backup. Okay, Connect will report your grade to me. Okay, the reason I had everybody, or I requested everybody do the Dropbox is because sometimes there's a little glitch in the Connect software that I keep thinking they're fixing and they don't seem to fix it, though it's less than it used to be. But it's never been more than every now and then. Connect will report a 0 for somebody. Okay. If it actually reports a 0 number, that is a clue to me that I need to get with that student and go have them take a screenshot of their lab or whatever, so that I can verify that they actually made a 0, because often they didn't. Okay. If you just didn't do a lab, it tells me that. Okay. I get a dash. I don't get a grade. I don't get a number grade. But if you did a grade, usually if you started the lab, it'll tell me that you started the lab, you didn't finish the lab. Sometimes I can kind of tell how much progress you made on the lab before you quit. And so that'll usually result in a low number, because typically you answered some question right on that pre-quiz before you got into the actual lab part. And so you'll have a few points at least, but an actual 0 is kind of a flag for me that something went wrong. So by taking a screenshot and dumping it in the Dropbox when you got done, then I can just easily go look in the Dropbox and see what your actual grade was. Okay. That, like I said, typically doesn't affect very many students in a lab. Okay. But it was just a little safety net that I wanted to have, so that it would make it easier for me to check out a grade that I had a question about, and also not have to email you and you email me back and get this back and forth. I was just trying to cut out some steps. Okay. So it's not a big deal if you didn't get in the Dropbox, as long as you're not one of those 0s. And if you are a 0 and I don't see anything in the Dropbox, I'll email. I'll still email you. Okay. I was, like I said, trying to prevent any of that from happening, but if it does, we'll deal with it. Okay. So chances are your grade is reported to me and you're fine. Okay.
Okay.
Did you get a chance to regrade test 2?
I have done the reworks on grade 2, and they should be showing in D2L.
I don't think mine was regraded. Like,
Okay.
because it showed the same grade as the first one. Like, before we redo it, it showed.
Oh, so yeah, your test grade doesn't change. All right. What you need to look at is in the column next to, or there may be a lab in between, but there's something called TR-2.
Okay.
That's your bonus. That's the
Oh,
rework.
okay.
Yeah. So, right. Good question though, because I think you've only seen that. Well, you haven't seen a gradebook spreadsheet like that at all. But yeah, that's how I keep the grades. And test 1, same way. Test 3, there's obviously not a rework because that was online and got open book, open note anyway. But yeah, the test grade never changes. It's just you get it. That's a bonus activity, so you get those bonus points added into a separate column.
Okay.
Okay.
How many points total do you need to pass? It's out of 649. You need about 4.
Oh, I haven't done the total points up yet. Well, I have actually, yeah. Let's see. Let me look at that. Since I've got screen sharing going on, we can. So grading adjustment to syllabus. If I pull this up, you can go D2L and you can see this later if you need to see it. Okay, so that's what the original points were, and here's our adjusted points of 880 total. Okay, so to pass, you need 60% of that. So you take 880 times 0.6, whatever that is. $528 would get you a 60% in the class. So that's a D, passing. And any other letter grade you want to figure. So, if you're looking at what do I need for an A, you take 880 and times by 0.9. For a B, it's 0.8. For a C, it's 0.7. Okay. Friday, hopefully. This is what I do every semester for my students when we're on campus, and I'm trying to keep this as much parallel to on campus as I can. But what I do on Fridays is I in class, I will hand out a sticky note with your total points at that moment, okay, and total points in the class. Now, I probably don't really need to do that since you've got the online access. But what I probably will do is send out an email, you know, how to calculate your grade, okay, which you just kind of did. But anyway, that's you know, you can, I'll give you your total points as of Friday in the class. So you can take that number of total points and divide by 880, and you can find out the worst case scenario, okay, of what you've got to what you've got to, you know, what your grade is if you took a 0 on the final, for example. And I don't think anybody's going to take a 0 on the final. Okay, you can always get some points on the final. Even guessing, you can get some points on the final. So that's, you know, you can sit there and play with how many points you need to get and all that. I always tell students on that Friday to not spend a lot of time playing the math game of what if. Spend that time studying instead. Okay, you can do a couple of calculations to get your idea, and then don't focus on it. Go study, because that's going to help the most. Okay. Students concerned about what they make on the final. I haven't done this in several years, but for a few years in a row, I did, out of curiosity, take students' averages on test 1, 2, and 3, and then look at what they made on the final. And I found that there's a general correlation, okay, between the average of your 3 tests and your final grade. It's like if you take the average of your 3 tests, that was the final grade. Very rarely did it go up. Okay, occasionally it does. Those were usually students who were, you know, in my office this last week of school. They were they were really doing the serious hardcore study thing, and they had improved their grade, but improved their average. But that's a rare student, seriously. Students dropping below their test 3 was less common than just scoring the average, but it did happen. Probably more than raising. Okay, but still the average thing was to keep the average. So an example is if you've made a 40 something on all 3 tests in this semester, you're probably going to make a 40 on the final. Okay, unless you do something different about the way you study. Okay, you hit those notes really hard and do some type of different way of remembering them than you have. You know, you've got to change your study habit or you're going to get the same result. Okay, or your study, I don't say habit, study method. It's better. Okay, all right. So that's one thing about the final. And yeah, I'm thinking, I was saying to 9 o'clock that I would send out their points, but I actually don't need to, because you can go into D2L and pull up your total points, right? That does show for you, right? I don't have that turned off or anything, right? Can you see it? People looked in
Yeah, we could see our points.
total points. Okay, good. I didn't know if you could see total points or just percentage. Because in order to calculate what you need, you've got to be able to see your points, the percentage.
It only shows the points. It doesn't show us the percentage. The percentage actually was by you sometime last week, I think.
Oh, okay. You asked for a percentage and I sent it. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. I think actually percentage is convenient, but I think those points are more important because you can calculate your percent really easy. There is a total points showing, right? See, I see both. When I pull up your grades, I've got your points and I see your percentage. So I'm not sure exactly how it's showing it for you, but if you can see the total points so far in the class, do they have your points out of something or another?
Yes.
Okay, so all you have to do is take points you've got and divide by that total point number, and that's your percent. And like I said, I think total points is more useful for figuring out kind of where you can go in this class with what's left.
So the final is going to be comprehensive, correct?
Yes, it is. from the beginning. In fact, a lot of times what I do is I haven't written the final. That's another thing I'll be doing this week after Wednesday. Okay, after I get all your lectures up, well, I've got to grade by Friday. I've got to grade your lab final because I want that total in there for you on Friday, and it may be late Friday before I get that done. But you know, I want you going into the weekend able to know where you stand in the class. I will try, actually, goal is by noon Friday because you can still drop this class on Friday by 4, I think, if you you know, just don't feel that you can pass. Okay. And so that's usually, again, a small number of people. But I like to try to get that up early enough. That's why I give them out in class on Friday. I want you to be able to make that decision and have the points, have enough information. Have enough information you can make that decision, because it's going to be all about your final exam at that point. You know, you can look and say, well, what do I think I can do on my final? I don't think I can. Okay, and then you've got that option still left to go and withdraw. And at this point, I can't think, well, I'd say all of you that are in this session right here, if you drop at that point, you're probably going to get a W and not an F. And also then you've got the option of doing, you know, pass fail too. But you know, if you'll probably only drop if you're failing. Though I've had a few students drop at that point because they, for scholarship purposes, didn't want to grade below a, I've had students drop because they want to grade below a B, and I'm like, come on. Okay. But C sometimes is important to students because grade point and whatever field they're going into requires them to have a C or something or higher. But that's, again, just a few rare people. But you know, pass. Okay, it would be a withdraw, and not a fail. Okay, for me, and then it's up to you whether you want to, you know, call that a, if you want to stay in and go for the go for the pass and maybe get the fail. But I wouldn't assign any Fs. The only people at this point in the semester would get an F if they dropped. I would still go ahead and assign, because I have an option at this point. It's past the withdrawal date. You can still withdraw, but the instructor has an option of whether they want to assign you the F or let you have the withdraw. I only give Fs in that case to people who, you know, stopped coming to class, stopped doing anything, haven't done anything since like February. I, you know, sent them emails, they haven't responded, they've not done anything, and all of a sudden they want to drop the class and get a W. And I'm like, no, you know, that's there's a game they're playing when they do that, and we don't want that. So it's not just me, it's other instructors. We all have, you know, the college kind of has some suggestions on that. Okay, so don't believe that applies to anybody here. Okay, so because you're all here, you're participating, so you're turning stuff in. So it would definitely be a W. Okay, so you have that option of looking at that on Friday. And I just, like I said, I want you to have enough information to make that decision. And so I will try to get those final exams graded and those grades in by hopefully no later than noon on Friday. Okay. Other questions?
For the paper, the lab final, are you looking for any footnotes, or you just want the works cited page?
I just wanted works cited page. I believe the MLA format does not use footnotes. I believe the MLA format uses end text citations. Right. My husband's English teacher. He's over here nodding his head. With works cited page. Right, works cited page. Yeah, or I allow references to be the title, but yeah, works cited. So what happens with that then is that when you're when you make give me some information in your paragraph, or if you're doing your steps, at the end of that step, you put in parentheses the author's last name and the date last name, comma, date in parentheses. Okay, and you're going to then make sure that you've got that in your works cited so that I can look and say, okay, so if I wanted to go check that information out, or I wanted to go and look at those procedures and maybe follow them myself, I can. Okay, and I've done that. I've checked up on student stuff, not because I was trying to catch them out in a falsehood, but because sometimes there's some really interesting information I didn't know, and I want to know more about it. Also, for the first time in probably 15 years, I got a garden plowed this year. And so if you give me some information about a plant I've planted or I'm interested in planting, I may go look it up. Okay, I may want to go look that up. So that's the whole purpose of that, is so that anybody who reads your paper can see where you got that information. And if they want to know more about it, they can go to that source and read more details. So that's how the MLA works. I don't think MLA uses footnotes at all. They may for certain circumstances. I think that's, what was it, Chicago style? The footnote one was the Chicago Manual of Style or something like that.
Footnotes are often in
Yeah.
Chicago Manual Style, Modified Chicago Manual Style.
Yeah,
Chapters, yes.
and that's a writing format that most people don't use anymore. Well, okay, yes. If you're a historian, if you're a history major, then possibly all of your papers may need to be asked to write by Turabian's Chicago Manual Style, though I think modified now. I think Dr. Loving uses MLA though.
No, he does for the college there. They
Yeah.
chose to move away from Turabian to make
Okay.
it easier for your school.
Yeah, talking to my husband here, he used to teach adjunct at the college too, so he knows a little bit about what's used in the English department and the history department. So yeah, if I've got any history majors in this class and you're used to Turabian, then when you go on from NEO, you'll probably be asked to write your papers in that. But for here, we're using MLA.
Okay. For my results, I do not have any like measurements of it to add any tables, but I do have pictures. Is that fine?
Yes, pictures are fine, and tables and graphs are optional. Those were bonus. Okay, if you look on the rubric, should be showing that that's optional. It's cool if you've got them. If you don't, not everybody's experiment lent itself to taking those types of data. It kind of depends on how you set it up and what your goals for measurements of success were. You know, of did the plant grow or not. Sometimes if you're looking at roots and you've got it in the soil, you can't uproot the plant every day and take root measurements. You know, if you sprout it on a paper towel, you can take measurements until you put it into the soil. So sometimes at the end here, when students, like last week, you would have actually made a lab presentation. If we had, excuse me, been on campus, you'd have made a lab presentation to the lab class about your plant. And you would have presented a lot of materials in your paper to the class. And at that point, sometimes when students, like with the pineapples, it's really hard to tell if the pineapple's done anything in all this time, because sometimes it really doesn't put on a lot of new growth because it's a slow grower anyway, and it's putting all of its energy into growing roots. So what we'll have to do is on that last day, or right before the last day, and people make their presentation, so it would have been like last Monday, we would have been uprooting some of those pineapples to see if it actually had formed new roots. And usually if it hasn't by this time, it's dead anyway, but you know, kind of look at that. So there was no table for that. It either did or it didn't. And so that one's a hard one to graph or make a table of measurements or anything along the way. So yeah, it's kind of plant dependent on whether you even have one of those. So that's why it's bonus. So that's fine. Pictures are great. I really, for this, I do want, if at all possible, a before, kind of before and after picture, an early on picture and a late picture. That's really difficult for some people who didn't get to take their plants home with them. So for that, I just ask for the earliest picture you've got of it and the latest picture you've got of it. There are a few people who didn't take any pictures at all, and they've emailed me about that. And it's kind of, you got to go with what you've got. Okay. Let's see, where did I hide that? Oh, here it is. Okay. Yeah, I was going to pull up that rubric real fast. Maybe fast, maybe not. So yeah, like I went over with this, last week in the Zoom meeting, but your intro, interesting facts about your plant, that needs to be, good paragraph with a bit of information, up to 3 citations per plant in that. So gives you 3 different sources to get information out of. So should be 1 or 2 paragraphs per plant, easy, hopefully. And then if you did additional plants, there's some bonus opportunities there. Always bonus opportunities for extra plants. So we get down here to the results and data. You can see that that's bonus for table and a graph, plus 2 points for each one. Okay.
Are we required to have quotes from our sources?
No, you don't have to quote your sources. You should, if you do quote, be sure and put in parentheses. And of course, you don't want to have too much of straight across stuff, or that's going to be plagiarism. Okay, so you got to be careful about that. I have the option of running things through Turnitin. Okay, I have done that to a few students in the past where I was reading it and it's kind of like, this is just copied and pasted from somewhere, and it was. Okay, I went and found where it was and copied and pasted whole paragraphs, or yeah, they'd actually taken like a few sentences here and a few sentences from somewhere else and stitched them together, except they didn't quite stitch. That's kind of what clued me in. And the vocabulary is very large and technical. Okay, very much botanical vocabulary that I haven't taught you. So, unless you've had a botany class, an advanced botany class, so it's like that. It's probably not words and terminology that student knew. So, yeah, don't do that. Obviously, put it in your own words. So that's really much. All of this probably should be in your own words. But you got that idea from somewhere. You learned that information from somewhere. So cite it. And if you look in MLA, for those of you who say, well, I talked to Aunt so-and-so or grandma, or mom or whatever they told me, there is a way to cite a person. Okay, it's called a personal interview. All right, and you can have that, but I don't want that for your only source. You've got to have other sources, and I really don't want 3 different interviews with different people. Okay, I want you to have some research in there other than interviews. Okay, but that's acceptable. Okay, if you personally know a plant expert, you can cite them. And yeah, if you've got something that's a really cute quote you want to throw in there, that's cool. But you don't have to have quotes.
For the steps or the procedures that was here, do you want us to like literally copy and paste the exact same way that we had it for our first growing plan procedures for the first semester, or you want us to, or we can like change it up a little bit but still add in the where we got that information from?
Yes, what I want you, I know that was an or question, I just answered yes to it. Okay, I'll clarify. So I want you to write what you did. Okay, so for that first assignment, you wrote steps, and it was great to cut and paste off somebody else's steps, what you planned to do. If that didn't change, then you can keep that. Make sure you cite your sources. Okay. If you change stuff though, you need to you write down what you did.
Okay.
Okay. So you would still cite the steps that are totally yours, and well, cite the steps that you borrowed from somebody else. If there was a step that you changed, why did you change that? Did you change that because you found another source that you liked better? Especially if you had to redo, then you need to cite that different source. Okay. in there for that step. Or if it's an original idea, I mean, original to you at least, during the course, but I thought this would be better, then you don't have to cite it. You will want to discuss that. So you might list your steps, and then at the end of your procedures listing, you might have a little paragraph discussing, okay, which steps you came up with on your own, how you came to those ideas, and why you replaced an original step. Okay, because I do have your original stuff here with me. That's why I have you have 2 copies of that. I keep a copy and have you keep a copy. It's because I hang on to those to the end to see kind of how things can change, which is kind of cool to see how students' procedures kind of morph over semester. So it's kind of expected that it will change, but that gives you some discussion in your procedures too. And that's the 4 points here down at the bottom: discussion of why procedures were chosen, changed, okay, etc. After you list them and these are numbered. I like to have these numbered steps with the citations at the end of each step, unless you took them all from the same source. Then you can note that at the bottom and then discuss why you liked that, what you changed about it along the way, that sort of thing. Okay, that clarified that for you?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, other questions?
Does the result slash data have to be like a long paragraph?
No. Well, so the rule on this paper here is that there's no page limit. There's not exactly even a page minimum, except if you try to do all this on one page, you haven't done it because there's no way you can get all this information onto one page and actually have any real information given. 2 pages is questionable. A page, I've seen a student do it in a page and a half. They were very succinct. They barely met the minimums. I've increased this requirement here a little bit since that time, so I'm not sure that you can even do it in a page and a half and actually get a high grade. Okay, because there's a lot of information I'm asking here. So but as far as paragraph size length here goes, it's as long as it needs to be and as short as it can be. Without going into a long story that as time goes on, I think might get me into trouble, because it was kind of a joke that a teacher told us a class in high school that was actually rather sexist. So I'm just not going to do it anymore. But short enough to keep interest and long enough to cover the subject. Okay, it's how long the paper needs to be, how long the paragraphs need to be. Okay, so your procedures section there, if one sentence tells me why you chose those procedures and describes changes you made, that I think would probably need to be a long sentence, but if it does it, it does it. I would expect a discussion probably to be a couple of 2-3 sentences here, especially if you made changes. Then that would probably take a little bit more description for me to follow your thought of why you did what you did. Okay, but it doesn't, we're not looking at a huge paragraph unless that's called for, unless there was a lot of things that happened and you really changed a lot and you really need to explain that and discuss it, then that could get kind of lengthy, but it's probably not.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Just checking. It looked like people leave, and leaving's fine if all your questions have been answered and you're good. I don't care. I just want to make sure somebody hadn't gotten kicked out and was trying to come back in and they're sitting in the waiting room waiting and I hadn't let them back in. So we're good. All right. So, well, that's a full hour practically here at 10:48. So I'm still here for more questions if anybody's got more questions. But if you're ready to leave, it's good to see you all. And it's probably last time we'll be doing this for the semester. So good luck on finals and have a great summer.
Miss Rose, I was wondering if you could check my online scientific lab to see if it gave you something in St. Gabe's, McGraw.
Um, Actually, can you email me that? Because what I'm doing today is emails between basically 9 and noon today. That's a small enough time period that I can go in and find everybody's emails and they won't have been lost over over the weekend. So if you can email me that, then I will systematically go through and do those sorts of things for people this afternoon. Okay.
Thank you.
Does that work? Okay, great. Thanks. Appreciate that.
All right. So Tim 50 has finished up a Zoom question and answer session. Did not have any questions, which is not unusual.